Nioh, the game series that fused the Souls-like genre with the loot system of Diablo and the complexity of Ninja Gaiden's combat. Some even say it should be its own genre, but game politics aside, the long-awaited Nioh 3 is finally here, and I was very fortunate enough to receive early access thanks to Koei Tecmo. Now, with being a fairly experienced Nioh player as seen in my Nioh 2 videos, I knew from the start I needed to challenge run this game, and I figured there was no better run to start with than a single stat run, which brings me here today to tell you my story of how I beat Nioh 3 while only leveling strength. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more crazy runs like these or just like seeing me suffer. With that said, let's get into the rules for this run. Rule number 1, I can only level strength and no other stat. Number 2, limited living artifact. Living artifact is similar to yokai form in Nioh 2, which can be pretty busted for boss fights. So I decided for only mandatory boss fights I wouldn't use it. Number 3, no co-op, I gotta do this run friendless. And lastly, beat all bosses, but I am only going to go over the mandatory ones. With the rules out of the way, we can get this story started. At the start of the game, we get the option to pick our starting weapon, and we only have 4 options this time, which is a pretty big change from the past 2 games where you could pick any weapon you wanted from the start, but with this being a strength run, I go with the Odachi. The game then teaches the player about ki pulsing, which allows the player to regain ki, aka stamina, back when pressing RB or R1 when the white bar fills your ki bar. We also learn about art proficiency in the art gauge. Once the art gauge is filled through attacking, blocking, or ki pulsing, your strong attacks and martial art attacks will glow, dealing more damage and ki damage as well as costing less ki to use. I will go over these 2 things in more detail in a bit. After getting out our first weapon, we can now pick our second weapon, which our second weapon will be for our ninja style. In Nioh 3, we have samurai style, which has ki pulsing and art proficiency, and ninja style, which has ninjutsu and fast dodges. Essentially, samurai style is like playing Nioh 1 and 2, whereas ninja style plays more like Bloodborne to a degree, but much faster. With that said, the weapon I chose for ninja style was the ninja sword, which has scaling and strength. After getting my weapon, the game teaches us about mist, which is unique to ninja style. Mist allows the players to dodge after attacking by pressing RB, which does not cost ki like a normal dodge would. Shortly after this, we learn about burst breaking, which is the same as Nioh 2's burst counter. Enemies have burst attacks which glow red, and the only way to stop this attack is by burst countering them with RT and A or RT and B. Once learning about the 2 styles from each master, we get their spirit guardians, Guhen and Nekomata, which will be the main 2 spirits I use for this run. After getting the guardian spirits, we find out our brother wants to be shogun instead of us and goes on a murder spree, so we try to stop him. Well, I did say try. Lucky for us, we are supposed to lose here. Upon losing, we now get to pick our personal spirit guardian, from which they strongly remind me of Spectrobes. Anyone else grow up playing Spectrobes? No? Just me? Alright then. So the one I went with was the ninja one, since I'll be leveling strength anyways, and the 1 point in skill will help with my armor activation. After picking our Spectrobe for the run, we get access to changing our spirit guardians, which I use to put Nekomata back on, because the ki recovery speed from his special effects will help out a lot. Moving on, I find out we could do air assassinations, which funny enough the game teaches you right after this that you can assassinate enemies from behind. Nice to see that assassinations are no longer locked behind a skill point. Another new change to Nioh 3 is that we have the ability to jump, adding another level of complexity to combat. Right after this, I get my bow, which I use to snipe some soldiers, and I highly recommend you do this throughout your run so you don't have to fight hordes of enemies in one go. With all that done, it's time for the actual tutorial boss of this run, Yamagata, who has a bigger Odachi than me. Hey, it's not the size that matters, it's how you use it. And he knows how to use his big one very well. The issue I ran into with all main human fights in this run is that I was trying to fight them like human bosses from Nioh 2, and if you do that, you'll be in for a rude awakening. In Nioh 2, the way to beat human bosses was through pure pressuring, but in Nioh 3, the main human fights can hyper armor most of their attacks, so by playing too aggressively, it can lead to you being in a sticky situation. Sadly, I won't learn this until much later. Also at this time, I ended up using Living Artifact because I thought a had to use it for this fight, and for the fact I didn't know yet if it was as strong as the yokai farms from Nioh 2, but in future runs I won't be using it at all, and y'all will understand why in a bit. After beating Yamagata, I finally made it to the open field section of the game. Yes, you heard correctly, dear viewer, open field. Unlike open world, you cannot go anywhere as you want from the get-go. Areas of the map will be locked away until you beat a part of the main mission. You still have the freedom to explore, it's just limited. Right after arriving at the main area, I get my first samurai skill point. Skill points are no longer obtained by leveling or using your weapon. They can only be obtained by finding them through exploration or completing missions. I used my first samurai skill point to get high stance, which means it's time to talk about the 3 stances. High stance has slow attacks but can deal more HP and ki damage to enemies. Mid stance has a medium attack speed with medium range with wide sweeping attacks to help with crowd control. And lastly, the low stance has fast attacks, which is great for applying status effects, but it doesn't deal as much damage. A very important thing to learn is stance switching. Once you obtain the flex skill in the samurai tree, you can get more ki back when switching stances instead than you would when ki pulsing. This is a must to learn if you want to combo enemies for big damage. Stance switching isn't the only thing unique to samurai style, you can also get the deflect skill. Deflect will allow you to block the enemy's attack without taking damage or losing ki. This is not like the Sekiro's parry where it will lower the enemy's stamina bar. Instead, you can obtain secret skills that will enhance the deflect to add deep buffs onto the enemy. With that said, let's get back to the open field section. Shortly after getting high stance, I come across a Scampus, who as usual is being a little scamp. By completing a Scampus task, it will reward you with a samurai or ninja skill point. I highly recommend finding as many as you can early on so you can have more martial arts or skills at your disposal. Throughout the map, you will come across enemy bases which will have enemies you'll need to defeat with one strong foe waiting for you at the end. Upon beating the base, you will be rewarded with a Kodama sometimes and a chest. Finding Kodamas will earn you Kodama merits, which you can use to increase elixir drop rates and other effects related to elixirs. I highly recommend that those who are new to Nioh get elixir drop rates maxed out before working on the other effects. Speaking of merits, there are Jizo statues that you can pray to earn Jizo merits. Also for my American audience, it's Jizo, not Jizzo. But even with me telling you that, I know it won't stop you from saying it that way. Jizo merits are similar to Kodama merits, but they only apply to the Crucible, and speaking of the Crucibles, in the open field you will come across lesser Crucibles, where you'll be faced with 3 waves of enemies, and upon beating them, your spirit guardians can obtain more special effects and your spirit force will be increased. Also, upon entering your first lesser Crucible, you'll get your guardian spirit skill, which is unique to each guardian spirit. It's very good for status effect buildup and extremely good for depleting yokai's maximum ki, which you need to reach to 0 to be able to grapple them. The bar itself needs to be reduced to 0, not the key resource to get a grapple off. This confuses a lot of new players, so I wanted to clarify that. While exploring through Nioh 3, you will come across wild bosses, some from old games like Mizuki here, and some brand new ones. After beating one of these bosses, you can then use them as a summon, which is great for the early game, since to use normal yokai as a summon, you need to beat their Crucible Wraith form to do so. So by taking on this challenge early, you can have a strong tool at your disposal. Not only do you have wild bosses you can take on, but you can take on side missions as well, and upon completing these missions, you can be rewarded with new gear, skill points, or even secret skills. But probably my favorite new thing is the Chikikos. These are spirit weasels that like to float in the sky, and when they are shot down, they will give you a skill point. But the really cool thing is they will give you a transformation of a martial arts skill. These transformation skills will add elemental effects to the weapons, allowing you for another resource for status buildup. So you'll need to hunt these guys down if you want to up your martial arts game. On the opposite side of martial arts, we have magic, which is now tied to soul cores from yokais, whereas in the previous games they had their own skill tree. So with how this new system works, I'll only be rocking one spell at a time. Sudamas also make a return, but this time they are shopkeepers. But the really important thing about them is the exchange feature. You can exchange yokai teardrops for secret skills or crafting techs. Please make sure to read the secret skills so you're not like me and pass up on Enduring Destruction, which lowers defense on enemies after burst countering them. With 85% of the game mechanics explained, let's get into the first major Crucible in this run. A Crucible is like a lesser Crucible, but instead of 3 waves of enemies, it's an entire dungeon dungeon that you need to explore, and make sure to explore carefully because you can find skill points and secret skills throughout the entire dungeon. Once making it to the end of the Crucible, a boss will be waiting for you, but before that, I made sure to level my strength up to 24. With that done, I was ready for Jakosu Baba. Also, the commenter that's about to tell me that I pronounced that wrong, I don't speak motherfucking Japanese. I really wish I could, but my monkey ass can't. In the first round, I was testing the water, seeing what I could get away with while playing aggressively, and found myself getting punished for it. With only 2 elixirs left, I decided to try out Living Artifact to see how strong it could be, and at first I thought they tuned it down from the previous yokai forms, but then I did its charge attack, dealing over 1900 damage in one swing. So yeah, it's definitely just as strong or possibly even stronger than yokai forms from Nioh 2, so I decided from this moment on I could no longer use it for boss fights. But it didn't really matter that I used it anyways because I ended up dying shortly after. For round 2, I decided to play more passive and give Deflex a shot. It was working well for me to get Deflex on his staff slams and then follow up with strong attacks and possibly twin moons after. Tragically, the second round was short-lived. Once back in the fights, I went back to my deflect strategy, and when I had the chance to use my Spirit Guardian skill, I would use it to lower the boss maximum ki. When the boss would go into the Dark Realm, I would use Mizuki Summon to try and damage the boss health and ki as much as possible, in hopes of getting him out of the Dark Realm sooner. Once out of the Dark Realm, I would go back to my deflect strategy, and after getting the boss's ki to 0, I would go into mid stance for long combos into high stance with the art proficiency activated for more damage. By doing this, it left Baba with only a smidge of health left, allowing me to finish him off with my Guardian Spirit skill. It's as they say, the third time's a charm. With Baba defeated, I get a new Guardian Spirit called Inko. The Blacksmith is now available, which I will go into a bit more detail later on. The Novice missions for Samurai, Ninja, and Magic are available, so I complete those to unlock more skills. After Baba, we also get Gale Sprint, which allows us to traverse faster through the map, and with Inko, we can run across walls to get access to areas we couldn't have beforehand. Also, titles make a return, but this time they are a lot more straightforward and easy to use in comparison to how Nioh 1 and 2 did them. You earn titles through completing tasks like kill X amount of enemies with a weapon, and when you earn enough points within a title category, you can use them to upgrade a special effect like decreased ki consumption when attacking. It is also at this point the map really opens up to you and you can start finding bosses like Kama-Itachi or even Hinoema.
Oh yes, take my money, I can't say no to a goth mommy.
Wait until you see Muscle Mommy.
What?
Well, with Scully incapacitated at the moment, I can also tell you all about exploration levels. Each zone within the map has an exploration level, and through finding chests, beating enemy bases, and lesser crucibles, you can increase it to a max level of 4, where you can get permanent stat buffs to your attack, defense, and luck. Through exploration, you can also find masters, which are mini boss fights against humans that have mastered 1 out of the 14 weapons in the game, and upon beating them, you can get a new skill from them and gear that is way above your pay grade. As expected from any open map, it is very easy to get over leveled. For example, I got to level 49 after exploring everything when the next main boss is a recommended level of 39. Normally in these circumstances, I would level restrict myself, but with it being my first playthrough and all, I wanted to explore everything. With that said, it's time for our next main boss, Baba the Second. Shellfish Boy here has a really cool gimmick of showing his attack before they can happen. But not just that, later on in the fight he can fake you out with the projections, so you need to be watching him closely to not get tricked. I wish I could say I didn't fall for it, but the big old cloister ended up killing me 4 times. The plan for this fight was to start with the Wind Familiar Talisman, which you can get from the Kama-Itachi Soul Core. This spell will have wind orbs floating around me while I attack, inflicting wind buildup to proc Blustered. Blustered makes it to where enemies lose more ki faster, like how Purification worked in Nioh 2. While this was going on, I would be using Ninja Sword to try and get a few quick attacks in, to then follow with Kick Slash for big ki damage. Once Baba was out of ki, I would use Guhen's Guardian skill to reduce his maximum ki bar while helping maintain wind buildup. With Baba out of ki, he will go into the Dark Realm where I would use my Ryomen Summon to try to get him out of it. You don't want bosses to stay in the Dark Realm because they will recover ki over time and your ki recovery speed is reduced. After getting Baba out of the Dark Realm, thanks to some deflects and strong attacks, I go back into the Wind Familiar and Ninja strategy. But this time I use Uncanny Bolts and Nico's Guardian skill to get Electrify off, to slow down the boss. By getting Electrify and Bluster off, Confusion will be applied on the enemy since he has 2 different elemental debuffs on him. Confusion will allow me to deal 50% more damage to the boss, and with that setup, I was able to bring the giant seafood platter down, but we're not done yet. Apparently an old friend of ours is running amok with his army, and if you couldn't have guessed it, it's Yamagata. Except this time he decided he was going to be more annoying by becoming a demon horse and slightly broken. You see, multiple times while fighting this guy, his AI kinda freaks out and he just runs in circles around me nonstop. He would just keep going until I knocked him out of it or ran away. Team Ninja, y'all might want to look into that. This fight was just one tragedy after the other. On my first attempt, I had a really good run where I thought I might first try him, but didn't dodge in time. And the worst was on my third attempt, where I was only one hit away from winning, and for some unknown reason, I didn't use any of my projectiles to finish him off. I was so tunnel vision on killing him with melee that I ended up getting grabbed and dying in the process. It wouldn't be until my 7th attempt that I would redeem myself. The 3 biggest things I needed to look out for was making sure to counter his burst attacks, because if I didn't, they could one-shot me. I also had to look out for his grab attacks, which I could avoid by dodging to the left, and when he goes into the dark realm, he shoots out fire onto the ground that you can jump over. I didn't always pull that one off. But by looking for those 3 things and staying in Samurai to play more defensive with the flex and blocks, I was able to survive the fight to get the win. Right after beating Yamagata for the 2nd time, I have to go through another Crucible dungeon where they have exploding chariots that you can burst counter. I wish I could say I was always successful at it. Here I got my strength to level 55 to take on the head honcho himself, Taketa, who also has a bigger Odachi than me. Except this time I was using my small package to its full potential with a non-stop barrage of slapping it in Taketa's face. Until he did his burst attack, which I am very confident I countered it, but ended up dying. If we slow down the footage and zoom on Taketa, you can clearly see he stops and flies back while being hunched over with red feathers flying out. Meaning I did counter him, but still got hit. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it does seem the iframes just weren't working there for some reason. Oh, something I forgot to mention about crucibles is that when you're in them, you can take corrosion damage from getting hit, reducing how much HP you can have. This can be fixed by attacking, regaining your spirit guardian, or later on with elixir upgrades. But back to me slapping Taketa with my small Odachi. An important skill I picked up was bolting bore. This skill will allow me to counter weapon attacks by slamming the enemy into the ground. Very good against human type enemies. Another skill I got was ground quake, which allows me to jump in the air, slamming my Odachi down. If you can get a direct hit on a human, you can actually flatten them for a final blow. So the strategy was just bolting bore counter followed by some attacks into ground quake, allowing me to easily deplete Taketa's stamina for a chill 2nd try. I wish I could say that was the end of Taketa, but after tracking him down, he ends up fusing with his spirit guardian to become a 4-armed lion yokai, and I have to say this is one of my favorite fights in the entire game. Not just for how cool Yokai Taketa looks, but how badass his attacks are, plus how well they are telegraphed. 2 of my favorite attacks from him are when he starts jumping off the walls into a slam attack, or when he conjures up a giant windfire ball, kind of looks like Ace's Entei attack from One Piece. But hold on, he can do the wall jump into the Entei attack, and it's just fucking amazing. I love it so much. The funny thing is, at this time, I didn't realize he was immune to wind. I just thought he was purely fire. So I should have switched out my wind familiar with the water familiar, which you can get from Baba the First Soul Core. But even with that mistake, I was able to figure out this fight real quick. I even almost first tried the big lug. My downfall was switching to samurai too soon. If I would have stayed in ninja style, I would have been able to stay on top and stagger Taketa, but alas, it was not fated to be. So the trick to making this fight a cakewalk was using ninja style's fast movement to dodge attacks and keep distance, and when Taketa would finish a combo, I would swoop in with my ninja blade to get a kick slash off to take chunks of his ki off. Once the boss was out of ki, I would switch to samurai to use Gohan's skill to lower his maximum ki. In the dark realm, I would go back to ninja and wait for a slam attack to break his yellow crystal, doing massive ki damage. I then switched back to samurai to deal strong attacks before going for the grapple. I did try to get art proficiency attacks off, but sadly at this time I still didn't understand how to chain strong and martial art attacks together with it, so I would end up dropping the combo. But even without mastering art proficiency, by just following this simple strategy, I was able to get the 2nd try. With beating Taketa, this completes the first map of the game, allowing me to move on to the 2nd map. Instead of talking about that though, intro, let's talk about art proficiency and how to actually use it properly. As y'all already know, the art proficiency gauge can be filled by attacking, blocking, deflecting, and key pulsing. You can even fill the gauge while in ninja style. So once the gauge is full, you can now start chaining strong attacks and martial arts attacks together. This is really good for trying to deal insane damage or help pressuring human bosses into submission. An example of a small combo you can do with the Odachi is Frost Moon Heaven into strong attack into swirling snow. To put this into button terms, it's RB plus Y into hold Y. A very simple combo, but as you can see, the human mini boss couldn't do anything about it, letting me drain his ki to 0 for an easy grapple. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The depth of which you can go with this system is crazy, and it's by far my favorite feature they have added. Hell, look at the GOAT Oniji Ball just bullying bosses with it. I can only imagine what professional Nioh players will do with this. With art proficiency explained, let's talk about the few things we get access to after completing the first map. First on the list is the tea house makes a return. The tea house is where you can join a clan that gives you a buff for siding with them. For me, I went with the Maeda clan since you can apply a defense down on enemies after grappling them, which also applies immediately to the grapple damage, so it's no brainer choice for me. Second on the list is you can do the adapt missions for samurai, ninja, and magic. By doing these, you can now wield 2 weapons on each style, allowing you to access 4 weapons at once. For magic, it allows you to do resting rites with soul cores, which will grant you soul fragments. You can use soul fragments to either level up your soul cores or spirit guardians. In my professional opinion, focus on your guardians. You'll get plenty of high level soul cores as you play. The last thing on the list is battle scrolls, which you do get access from the start of the game, but after beating a major map, you get a mission that makes you go up against 5 bosses in a row from that time period. It's just insane that they would let you do this right after completing the map. This mission is no joke either. It took me a few hours of trying to beat it within this run, while me using living artifact as well, but I was able to beat my head against the wall to pull it off. With all that explained, let's move on to the second map where we get introduced to Tingu, and shortly after being introduced to him, we have to fight him. The first attempt was very short-lived, but on round 2, I brought my A game. Also at this point, I thought it would be fun to spice things up, so now I am using Tonfas for ninja, and for samurai I am using Cestus, which Tonfas are still the reigning kings of ki depletion, and Cestus as usual can deal great damage when continually comboing with them, since Cestus weapons get stacks of attack gain when comboing martial arts together. Overall, Tingu was a pretty chill boss. I would just wait for him to do a burst dash over to me so I could counter him to follow up with a barrage of Tonfas Max to reduce his ki to 0, giving me the chance to switch to samurai afterwards to go full limitless on him, which is a Cestus skill that lets you continuously attack, but you can make it faster if you time pressing square or X as you would hit, which almost killed Tingu, but this time I wasn't going to make the same mistake as Yamagata and shot Tingu in the face with my rifle, earning me the second try. Also, if you have been enjoying this video and would like to see more like it, please consider subscribing. I'm not too far away from 100,000 subscribers, and I would appreciate the support. After beating Tingu, we meet an old friend from Nioh 2 who is kind enough to lend us his guardian spirit, Kurama Tingu. With Kurama, we can now wall jump, meaning it was time to explore the first map and see what I can find. To my surprise, I found an optional boss fight with the Demon of Pride. This was an intense boss fight. From the start, I made sure to get Bluster off so that I could lower the boss's ki faster. Right after that, I used Neko and Uncanny Bolt to apply Electrify and Confusion, slowing down the boss while allowing me to deal more damage. Once in the Dark Realm, I used my new Tingu summon to annihilate his ki. This is where I learned some boss summons are really powerful at lowering ki, and it won't be long until I get one that feels extremely busted. But thanks to Tingu, I could knock the boss down to get a grapple off, putting him at half health, which makes Mr. Pride here go super crazy with bubbles and start launching them at you. He must secretly be a bubble mage main in Elden Ring. This is where things were starting to get a bit spicy, and I was struggling to keep up with learning his moves on the fly. I was able to get a good fist combo off to lower a decent chunk of his health, but even with that, it didn't stop me from getting hit to the point of not having any more elixirs, and he almost killed me near the end, where I honestly thought I was going to lose, but I was able to keep my composure to rush in and get a Tonfa hits in with a follow-up Nico kick, allowing me to get the first try with an Uncanny Bolt. Talk about a nail-biter fight there. Now, there is a secret cutscene for doing this, but you will have to earn that fight for yourself, dear viewer. Now, back to the snow map, where we are tasked with repelling 3 corrupted seals, except I ran into another optional boss called Bloodedge. That is probably harder than the majority of the bosses in the game. A really cool thing about Bloodedge is that he can buff himself with all the Revenant Graves nearby, So to counter this, I just led him away from it, stopping him from buffing himself, making the fight a bit easier, but I still died 20 times to him. Well, 10 of those deaths were due to me falling off a ledge or getting stuck on something. Either way, I died a lot, and it took me a minute before I beat him. Also in the snow area, we can meet everyone's favorite Nioh 1 tutorial boss, some yokai mermaids that are secretly hideous looking creatures but hide that behind the mysterious magic of makeup, and our old friend Ninra returns from Nioh 2. Bringing back old bosses with new movesets has been something I've really been enjoying through this run. You get that nostalgia of seeing them while getting a fresh new experience of fighting them with new attacks. A very nice touch by the developers. Around this point, I got my strength to 87, making me a bit over leveled, but that won't matter for this next boss, who is objectively the best boss in the game, Muscle Mommy.
Muscle mommy? Please, oh please step on me.
Okay, might be going a bit far there, but...
Did I hear muscle mommy? Please, muscle mommy, step on me.
Wait, what?
Please, muscle mommy, step on me.
Well, it's as they say, if you can't beat them, join them.
Please, muscle mommy, step on me.
Alrighty, after regaining my composure and dignity, it's time to fight Ibaraki Doji, Shuten Doji's sister or wife. Not too sure about the lore for that one. Ibaraki was a tricky one for me, and that's not because I was distracted by her muscles, it's the fact she can use those muscles to absolutely obliterate me in 2 hits or even 1 sometimes. To add to this, she can summon lightning arms to hit you and even use them as a whip. Probably the coolest attack she has is making a giant lightning hand and slamming it down, followed by an electric explosion. But the attack that got me the most was her dash burst attack. You see, once she reaches her second phase, she can now extend her thrust combo at the end with a burst attack, which not only caught me off guard, but what makes it so tricky is she won't always do it after the dash combo. So you have to be very careful of when she does the dash combo to be ready just in case she will do it. While struggling with this attack, I ended up dying 7 times. The trick I found to beating her was staying close and dodging to the side to get back shots in. For a good amount of her attacks, you can dodge or run around her, leaving her open to be hit from the back, which is really good in ninja form since you deal more damage when doing back attacks. I did try and use samurai style for this fight, but since I lean more into dodging than parrying, I ended up resorting back to ninja style, which is part of the reason I was finally able to pull this one off on my 8th attempt. Oh, also, this didn't happen to me when I was fighting her, but if you get grabbed by her, well, let's just watch. This is going to make a lot of people happy and die on purpose, aka Doomwolf. With Muscle Mommy taken care of, I head to the next seal where a giant crow is shooting at me. Seeing the ice walls, I thought I just needed to use those to get by, but apparently Doom's first thought was to blow the giant bird up with a cannon, so that's an option. After this, we come to our next boss, which apparently the devs want us to fight one of the monsters from where the wild things are. Alrighty, Team Ninja, just ruin my childhood, why don't ya? Otoroshi threw me off on the first round because his hitboxes were just a bit wider than I expected, but not wide in a bad way, more just me being negligent of his size. For round 2, I started to get a better grasp of his attack patterns, finding that I can get behind very easily after he teleport grabs or after his 3-swing combo. But I hadn't experienced his Dark Realm form, which puts him standing up slamming giant icicles around, so I ended up using all my heals, leaving me with only 5% HP, and with only having that amount, I wasn't going to survive a burst attack. With now learning his Dark Realm phase and already having the hang of his normal phase, I was just able to bully poor Carol. I thought for a second I was going to get a no-hit, but I slipped up on a burst counter. Would have been nice to get a no-hit, but it is what it is. Either way, I was able to bring Carol down on the 3rd attempt. Also, for those who have never read Where the Wild Things Are, Carol is the main monster character in the book. With Carol taken care of, it's time to fight the male version of Yuna from Final Fantasy X. For this fight, Yoshi joins you. I don't know if you can tell him to sit out or not, but from what I can tell, he has to be part of the fight. For the first 3 attempts, I thought I could just pressure Kagay Toki with my fist weapons, and that backfired pretty hard. So I just switched to Tonfa's, and yeah, I could pressure him to the point he really couldn't do anything. It also helped that I was using the lightning familiar that you can get from Raijin Soul Core to just keep him in a constant state of electrify. Also got to use Muscle Mommy's summon, and she just straight up flattened his ass. So thanks to Muscle Mommy, Lightning Familiar, and Tonfa's, I was able to beat Kagay Toki on on my 4th attempt. After beating Yuna 2.0, I get access to my 2nd summon slot and I level my strength to 96. I decided to start exploring and came across another demon, the Demon of Envy, who can shoot out fire through her snake's mouth and can do a meteor kick. I'm gonna be honest, this fight was a blur to me with all the fire attacks going on. I just dodged to the best of my abilities. I just knew once her maximum key bar was low to switch to Fist to deal as much HP damage as possible. Also, to show you how busted Muscle Mommy is against yokai bosses, she literally depleted the boss's ki to 0 when it still had over half of its ki. Most summons can't even come close to doing that. Everything was looking great at first until she went batshit crazy with consecutive explosion attacks, making me use up all my heals. So, with seeing that she only had about 10% HP left, I said fuck it and charged in for the kill. It might have been a risky gamble, but it paid off because I was able to get the first try. There's only one more demon left after this, so let's see if I can keep the first try wins going against them. With the Demon of Envy taken care of, we need to take care of Yoshi's brother, who is also plagued by the deadly sin that is envy. Yoritomo was a challenging fight, but not as tough as his brother was in Nioh 2. Yori ended up killing me 8 times thanks to my inability to dodge. The strategy for Yori was really straightforward, just pressure with tonfas until his ki was past halfway, and then use Demon of Envy summon to reduce his ki to 0, allowing me to punch away with my fist. I then repeat this again, but with Muscle Mommy to get another opening to use my cestus. To help with ki recovery, I used the Barrier Talisman, which I was able to get from Carol's Soul Core. With just doing this, I was able to get Yori to about 1/4 of his HP, and added a well-timed burst counter leading into a grapple. I could get his HP to 10%, meaning I could finish the envious bastard with a well-timed Neko kick. With Yoritomo defeated, it was time to travel back in time, and speaking of traveling back in time, we get to see an old friend from Nioh 1, the Stone Soldiers. I never expected to see these guys again, but probably the most egregious thing Team Ninja did was making the giant leeches even larger. These yokai leeches were the only normal yokai that actually scared me in this run, which is a bit disappointing, but I'll go into that after the final boss. After smashing some Stone Soldiers and giant leeches, I came across a fair maiden that needed some help from the Fist of Equality. Well, in this case, it would be the Axe of Equality and Split Staff of Equality, since those were the next 2 strength weapons to try out. I'm not going to lie to y'all, I should have lost multiple times, but I somehow kept staying alive in the 2nd round. I'm pretty sure I got hit by the majority of the attacks thrown at me. This fight looks like you would have to beat both the Lady and Corrupted Kusanagi, but all you have to beat is Kusanagi. The trick for him was just letting him come to you. When not being next to the Lady, she really doesn't try to attack you, leaving room for just you and Kusanagi to fight, and with me using an axe that can spin means Kusanagi was no match for the spin to win technique, followed by a Guhin slash attack. After the fights, we learn that the lady's brother has gone cuckoo for Powerpuffs and we have to stop him. So the lady and I teamed up to fight our way through an army of stone soldiers and yokai for me to solo her brother. Hiroko in his first phase is human, so I end up sticking with Split Staff to fight him since I find axes to be a bit slow for human fights. I also thought with the Split Staff being on the ninja style, which is more straightforward to use than the stance system, that I would actually catch on quickly on how to use it properly, but this weapon still eludes me on how to use it efficiently. But no worries, my Muscle Mommy and Snake Mommy were able to help me make it to phase 2, where Hiroko has his own living artifact form and can zip around very quickly. Luckily with ninja style, all I had to do was press X, X, and Y a few times for a good damage, so it wasn't hard to get back to phase 2. Right out of the gate, I went with Ibaraki to apply Electrify while taking off half his ki. I then would go Split Staff to reduce his ki to 0 while using Neko's Kick to keep the Electrify up. Once he was out of ki, I would go Samurai for Guhin and for the axe. Since the axe is still the reigning champ of deleting maximum ki, this sent Hiroko into the Dark Realm where I used Demon of Envy to lower his ki down. Now in hindsight, I should have used the Demon of Pride instead since Hiroko uses mostly fire, but I wasn't thinking of things through at the time. After this, I would use Split Staff to lower his ki so that I could combo into my axe with Whirlwind buff by proficiency boost to do some serious damage. With my Whirlwind skill having wind on it, it applied Blustered, making it easier for me to reduce his ki back to 0, except Hiroko wasn't going to go out without a fight, reducing my elixirs to 0, but this isn't my first time in this run being down to 0 health, and the boss on the verge of death. So I do as I have done before and trust my instincts to charge on in and go for the kill. It was a very close call near the end, but I knew to believe in the Unga Bunga way of hitting a boss with a giant axe for the win, where we get this cool ending scene that makes it look like we're going to finish off Hiroko off, but he managed to escape, bringing us back in time to stop our masters from dying at the hands of our brother and take on our corrupted brother to set him free. So it has finally come to the human fight that made me realize they are no longer like the Nioh 2 human fights. In Nioh 2, the way to beat human bosses was through pressuring, which can be done to many human bosses in Nioh 3, but not to the main human fights. The main human fights can now hyper armor out of the blue, and if you don't attack them right after they finish a combo, they can hyper armor again. Now, this doesn't bother me since this is fairly similar to how Kazan human fights play out, but in Kazan, you can combo those bosses once they are out of stamina, and you can lengthen that combo if you're behind them. That is not the case here. Here, after comboing for a short bit, the human boss will just get all of its ki back. Again, this is fine, they get it back as they should, but the window to combo is so short you can't actually combo them, and from what I found, attacking from the back doesn't extend that combo duration. Personally, I think the devs who made Kazan did it better. Here, it just feels like I'm fighting a Dark Souls boss in a Nioh game. The worst part is, this didn't click for me until I died 28 times. I kept trying to play it as if it were Nioh 2, and I was being punished for it, as I should, because I should be playing it as Nioh 3, but I don't like how main human bosses can't really be comboed. I think the window to combo should be longer, because comboing in Nioh is one of its unique features, and it makes that combat so much more fun. So by taking comboing away, you just reduce this fight to a slogfest, when you could reward the players by allowing them to master the proficiency system to do crazy damage once a human boss is out of ki. Either way, once I decided to fight the boss as a Dark Souls boss, just waiting for him to whiff and then attack, I was able to beat him, which made the fight very boring for me, which sucks because this is a major fight within the story. Now, by saying this, I'm not saying all human fights are this bad, but Tokugawa was by far the most egregious. With that said, I think the fight is still very well designed, I just think the player should be rewarded for learning the proficiency system. Alright, after beating Tokugawa, I can access to the veteran missions for Samurai, Ninja, and Magic, where you have to beat each master, and after beating each master, you get access to Mystic Arts, which is going to be the main skill that you focus on how you are using your weapon. Like for example, for Cestus, I went with Unbowed, which reduces the ki consumption of connecting skills while the enemy is aware of you, essentially meaning when I chain martial art attacks together, it will cost me less ki, which in using the less ki gives me more ki to use for longer combos. Whereas the other skill, Gong, helps extend the duration of Unbroken when recovering full ki when ki pulsing, which is the skill that gives you stacks of damage when connecting martial arts together. So depending on which mystic art you go with will affect how you use that weapon. While on the subject of game mechanics, let's go over smithing real quick since you should have unlocked everything by this point. As before in the other games, you can dismantle your gathered gear you don't use to be able to craft new ones. Except like in the other games where gear that was crafted has lower stat requirements to activate special effects, they just threw that out the window and I'm a bit salty about it. Because as someone who challenge runs these games, I actually had armor sets I could still work with if I picked the right starting options in Nioh 2, but now I am forced to just stick with the starting gear you can craft. I get the game is not meant to be challenged and was not designed to be that way, but they did have it this way in 1 and 2. And I don't see any reason why they should have changed this. Another aspect I'm not a fan of is the remodel system. In Nioh 2, this was how you could change your stat focus to one of the 3 stats the weapon was associated with. Now it makes any weapon you use any stat you want, which just throws weapon identity out the window. I get why they did it, and it doesn't really bother me that bad, but I just prefer weapons to have a stat identity, because technically now when I do single stat runs, I could just use the same weapon over and over again. Either way, let's get into some good changes. Leveling up weapons is a lot easier now with soul matching. All you have to do now is soul extract weapons to get yellow ore and use that ore to level up the weapon. The same goes for increasing the weapon sub level, which is that +1 or 2 you see on gear. You just need to extract this gear with the +1 or 2 you don't want to get azure ore, which you can use on rare gear or higher to increase the sub level. A lot easier to understand, I can get behind this. They also changed how changing special effects works, where you now need specific resources from dismantling to get specific special effects. I am indifferent to this change, but I did prefer how Nioh 2 did it, just because it seems to have way more depth to the special effects than this one. The effects seem a bit too simple for my liking, but this could change through NG cycles. With smithing covered, let's move on to the final map, which puts us in the red light district of Kyoto. Which Team Ninja knew what they were doing here, because you can rematch Muscle Mommy here, and you can fight Kasha from Nioh 2 and Jorogumo from Nioh 1. Don't worry, worry, Hinoema is around but in a scroll mission for this area. Oh, two things I forgot to mention. For the yokai walls that you come across, make sure to look for grave sites nearby. You can find which gesture color failed to work. So for me, it was the blue gesture, so now I know it's either yellow or red gesture, guaranteeing me to open the door without having to fight it. The other thing I forgot to mention is crucible weapons. These are weapons that can only be found in the crucible and will have the curse mark on them, meaning when you use this weapon, you will get corrosion upon being hit. The trade-off to this is you can get crucible skills, and once you get a max familiarity with that weapon, you can keep the crucible skill. But with that said, let's jump into the next main fight, which is with the main pimp of this area, Takasugi. After the previous main human fights, I was not expecting to like this one, but I actually enjoyed it. In his first phase, he acts more like a mini human boss where he can actually be staggered, but once in phase 2, his guardian gives him magic armor, which means he can't be partial broken as easily. But if you're next to him when he gets this buff, you can also get this buff as well. I found this was way better handled than Tokugawa. With that said, it didn't mean I didn't die a few times trying to use the split staff and the axe, so I knew I needed to bring out the big guns, aka the Odachi. Oh, also, I was right earlier, apparently you can get the burst counter off, but if the attack has like an AoE effect, it can still hit you afterwards. As you can see right here, I burst counter the attack, but got hit by the AoE. Team Ninja, y'all really need to fix that because it's just straight up bullshit. Back to the fight though, with having the Odachi, I could use the combo that I taught y'all earlier with Frost Moon Heaven into Strong Attack into Swirling Snow, but Taka didn't block, so I had to use Guhen's skill to recover ki back. If you didn't know this, when you're using a Guardian skill, it doesn't use up ki, so you can use it at the end of a combo to keep the pressure going while building up your ki back. Once Taka went into phase 2, Muscle Mummy and I teamed up to slam him into the ground to be hit by her lightning explosion. With being buffed by Taka's guardian spirits, I was able to stand my ground and face take him to finish him off, making me the new pimp of the Red Light District. Also, Team Ninja, when are the players going to get to use pistols in a Nioh game? We saw them in Nioh 2, and they're here again in 3, but we still can't use them. Come on, I would love to do a pip run through Nioh. After beating Taka, we find out there was a misunderstanding and that we're on the same side, and he needs me to go take out a crucible, meaning it's time for the next boss, Nuribo Toki. Nuribo Toki. I think that's how you say it. At first glance, I kind of laughed at how he looked, and then he killed me within the first minute of the fight, and I wasn't laughing anymore. It was time to get serious. I started the fight with Ninja Sword to get Kick Slash off. I then switched to Cestus to go into Beyond Infinity for some HP damage. Once in the Dark Realm, I used Muscle Mommy, who once again deleted the boss's entire ki bar. Sadly, I didn't manage my ki well with Cestus, so I couldn't take advantage of the opportunity. So I switched to the axe to use Heaven and Earth to destroy the boss's maximum ki. With the boss not having much health and ki left, I switched to Tonfas to drop his ki to 0 as fast as possible. I then switched back to the axe to finish off his maximum ki, but the boss somehow survived it. Reacting quickly, I went back to the Tonfas to stagger the boss again to be able to finish this fight off properly with the iconic strength weapon that is the axe. With Nuri defeated, that only leaves one more foe in my way before the final fight. But first, I want to advocate for doing the side missions because if you don't do them, you can miss out on fights with a giant zombie elephant chicken who has a really good summon, or you will miss an insane fight with Soji, and you don't want to miss these fights. Also, something I learned around this point is that confusion can be extended. When you add a third element to an enemy, you will notice that the confusion icon will get a 3 on it. This might seem like you'll do more damage, but after some testing, it just increases the duration of confusion. What was actually confusing but funny was seeing a yokai fall into a small hole and get stuck just hopping in place. I ended his misery, but he just stayed frozen in one spot for all eternity. With that said, it's time for the second to last boss of this run, Fish Boy. Oh, I don't know if it needs to be said, but I have been at 99 strength since coming to this time period. That's why I have so much Amrita. Either way, Yoshinobu here was a bit of a pushover for me. He had very easy burst attacks to counter, the Tonfas were just melting his ki away like it was nothing, especially when using Mountain Breaker Lightning, leading to an easy proficiency combo from the Odachi. It would have been wiser to use the axe here, but I wasn't paying attention to what I had on me at the time. I was feeling like hot shit until near the end I somehow forgot how to use the dodge button, that I ended up running out of elixirs, with the boss still having a good chunk of health left. But you know what? Mama didn't raise no quitter. I found the opportunity with a burst counter to go full throttle with attacks to get the grapple off. I then waited for my prey to make one more mistake so that I can go for the kill. Yoshinobu went for the grab, and that was a massive mistake on his behalf because it allows me to get behind him for back attacks. With a flurry of Tonfa blows, Fish Boy goes down, earning me the first try. Now, this fight was fairly easy for me, but for different challenge runs like ninjutsu only, like poor Lemon over here, this fight can be a living hell, and I highly recommend you go check that video out to see the difference between the two runs. With Yoshinobu defeated, that just leaves the final fight, where we now have to fight a wave of enemies with our friends that we made along the way, to then have to fight the Death Veil, which is just multiple crucible fights. After beating all the crucibles to bring down the Death Veil, it's time for the final fight with Hiroko, but first I got one more demon to take care of. The next demon on the chopping block is the Demon of Obsession. I have to say I love its design. The gluttonous monster stomach with a wolf or bear head coming out of it while wielding a cannon with a cannonball necklace is just a really unique design. On top of this, he uses wind to control the cannonballs to throw them at you. It's super cool. It's a shame I bullied the fuck out of this fight so easily getting the first try. Luckily, after beating all 3 demons, you can actually get a scroll mission where you can fight all 3 back to back, and in that one, he feels a lot more aggressive than he did in base game. With that said, it's time for Hiroko, and as tradition goes on this channel, I show the full fights on the first challenge run in the game. I just need to point out at the time, I didn't realize the game settings were messing with the OBS recording. So if the audio is off or some stuttering happens, I apologize. But I hope you enjoy the fight. Talk about a final fight, and if you're wondering, yes, that was a first try. I had a blast playing Nioh 3, and I want to say thank you again to Koei Tecmo for early access, but I still have 2 things I need to address. The first thing is, I think Nioh 3 needed a difficulty option for hard mode because I found the game was just a bit too easy for the most part. I think the current difficulty is great for those who play Souls games casually and for those being introduced to Nioh for the first time. But for veterans or challenge runners, this game felt way too easy in comparison to other games like Kazan, for example. You have to understand, I didn't even use items like steel pills, power pills, sacred water, or even sacred brush. All of these things could have made fights even easier than they already were. I don't think it's fair to veteran players that they have to wait until like NG+4 or restrict 90% of the mechanics just to even get a small challenge out of it. You can have a hard mode that forces the player to use every mechanic to its fullest to win. Kazan did this and it worked out great. You had a normal mode for those who just wanted to play the game, and then you had expert mode for those who wanted to be challenged. With saying this, I'm not saying that I didn't have fun with the game. I really did enjoy every second, but most boss fights just were a bit too easy, and my god, the open world enemies, they just felt like punching bags. There were yokai from Nioh 2 that I was scared of, but in Nioh 3 they felt like basic gakis. Having a difficulty option lets everyone win here. Kazan and Liza P are good examples of this. Now on to my second point. The game should not be $70, but $60. $70. 70 is just way too much. Especially right now with how the economy is, if the game was 60, more people would pick it up and increase sales. I understand Koei Tecmo needs to pay Team Ninja, marketing, graphic designers, and all that. But $70 is just going to hurt y'all in the long run. Look at Elden Ring. When it came out, every new game was going for 70 bucks, but FromSoft went with $60 even when their game had more to offer than the others, and they outsold all of them. I might have gotten this game for free, but I'm not blind to what is going on in the economy. I want to reiterate again, I am very grateful for getting early access, and I do think Nioh 3 is a must-play game. Just remember, it's okay to wait to play the game. I know FOMO is a thing, but it's better to wait until you have the money to do so. With all that said, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, hit that subscribe button. At this time, I would also like to thank my channel supporters. If you too would like to support the channel or have your name in the video, you can click the Patreon link in the description or click the YouTube join button. I also from time to time stream my runs, so you can catch me streaming on YouTube or over on Twitch at Kane Gaming. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.